Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Kickball Podcast. Here we've got a very special guest with us today, the technical director of the Oakland Roots, the Oakland Soul, and Project 510 that we'll get into a little bit later, Mr. Jordan Farrell. How are you, sir?
I'm doing all right. Doing all right. How are you?
Thankful I get to have this conversation. I feel like I say this all the time, and I feel like a broken record, but I'm just thankful to have conversations, and especially with someone like yourself who's had, been around the coaching environment, been around the Roots for so long. It's a pleasure for me.
Yeah, really excited for the conversation.
Yeah, so I mean, I'd love to get right into it. Please, if you could, for those of us who maybe are outside of Oakland, like myself, who're still getting to learn a little bit about the club, about USLW, about USL2, tell us a little bit about what you oversee, what your role is within, the Oakland soccer family.
Yeah, there's a really cool family of brands, but all the same club. So the club started as Oakland Roots Sports Club, actually, back in 2019. It's came through NISA and whatnot into the USL Championship, and then being in the USL Championship, we added League Two. So we moved Project 510 from NPSL, where it started, into League Two. And Project 510 being the U20 team, and Oakland Soul, our women's team, which right now is in USLW and eventually will end up moving into the Super League. So my role as technical director is to connect all the football, to make sure that the general club values, the operation, the people, etc. In the roles overseeing each one of those, the coaches, the assistant coaches, goalkeeper coaches, operations, performance medical, and scouting and recruitment all connect. So it's a ton of fun to put everybody together, and get everybody working together. And we got some really good people in the building.
Now, and something that I'm sure really takes up and eats up a lot of your time, and so that's why I'm really appreciative for this time that we've got now. But I mean, between scouting and even I know at least with technical directors of other organizations, a lot of that is very coaching centric of making sure that things line up on that end. But it seems like it just goes so much further with what you're able really to reach from. I mean, how did you develop into this kind of role? Because I know you were in coaching for a little bit, both with academies and in past, and I'll let you talk about that. I wouldn't want to give too much of your bio out, but how do you even end up in this kind of role? I mean, over years and years of experience in USL.
Yeah, it's definitely, I guess I didn't set out to be a technical director, but
Mhm.
when I first started, I was in coaching. I moved back to the United States after playing over in Germany for a little bit after college. And when I first started, I was coaching a club team, U17 club team. They were pretty good. They did the kind of Surf Cup, Northern California NPL, back then. And then you start to think about how do you influence what's around the team. And so I was a director of player development at the club in Manteca that I started coaching with, and then moved over to actually be a technical director at what was Monarchis Academy, is now Central Valley Surf. And that was my first kind of taste of looking at the overall technical project and the idea of how we train, how we recruit, how all of that kind of comes together. But meanwhile, I was working at the junior college in town, and then transitioned to being an assistant coach when we restarted the program at UOP, back in 2014. So that period of time for me was actually like it was a lot of coaching, it was a lot of hours of practice, and I was starting to get my feet wet in just training methodology and really what I was also doing my master's degree in sports pedagogy and coaching, but it was heavily focused on the management of the overall sports enterprise. So I didn't look at coaching from just like an on the field thing. We I took courses in marketing and analytics and all those types of things through the process. And so you start to look at, like, again, all of the different influences on what you see on the field. And then managing a sports enterprise, whether it's a college athletic department with 28 teams or something like that, like, or it's a youth club with all of your teams at different age groups, at different competitions. And so as I continued to grow as a coach, from being an assistant at UOP and to moving up to Sac Republic's academy. When I got into the academy there, my main focus was, I want to learn about the steps for a player to become a professional, not working with U23s, if you call college U23s, um, working with younger but not as high level players in the club. This was a chance to work with really players throughout the pathway stages where in Sacramento we had a talent suck. Like we had an incredible funnel of talent because there's just so much talent, not just in the Sacramento region, but in the Central Valley. And so getting to work with some top players that were really at the transition stage. Everybody knew they were top talents, but the transition to becoming a professional was something that I really learned during my time at Republic's Academy. I coached the year of 2018, as happens in professional clubs. Uh, I ended up coaching every age group from 13s to 19s in the calendar year. The start of the year, I was coaching the 13s and 14s. Simon Elliott went to be the head coach of the first team, and he was the coach of the 17s at that time. And he took his assistant with him, who was the 19s coach. And so I ended up working with the 17s and the 19s for the remainder of the year, and the 15s during a certain period of time as well. So it was a crazy year of seeing a bunch of different age groups. But for 18-19 that season, it was the 17s and the 19s. I was the head coach of both. So I had this pool of players, and there was a bunch of players who have gone on to um, uh, careers in whether it's Europe or the United States or whatever. I've seen them kind of grow. And it was a really cool time to see the stage from elite talent to professional and see how these players were growing. So when I came to Roots, I wanted to be a coach. I've always wanted to be a coach. I think that's important. But I also, the idea of being a technical director came when we talked about building more than just a first team. So I'd been an assistant coach when I first came to Roots. Then I was the head coach for 2 years, two kind of crazy years because of COVID, 2020 and 21. But when we moved into the USL Championship, the idea was, okay, women's soccer is coming. We want a U20 local team, and we want to start really kind of building this professional development pipeline for local talent because we know that there's going to be a mix of localness and globalness in the first team roster because that's what Oakland is. But we want to have this pipeline. So for at least um, uh, uh, that idea then from the board and from alongside our VP of football Eric Yamamoto, who I work alongside, that idea was like, okay, well, as a technical director I get to kind of build everything around the first team, not just the first team but everything around the first team and on the men's and women's side. So it's been a really fun project for the last few years. Again, women's not all the way to professional, but building the professional development step for local talent from mainly the 510 and 925 area codes here in Northern California, but also around Northern California has been really cool. So you asked kind of how I came to the technical director role. It's a mix of experience at professional level, but also at youth level and the transition to professional and seeing how players who can have a 4-year career in college and go on to play and win the MLS and play in the USL Championship and play overseas. And players can also go to college for a semester and take that step. Players can use the junior college route. Players can skip college altogether. Like there's just so many different pathways that players travel. And I think we took that into consideration when we were building the steps underneath this, but it's been a fun process looking at the club, not just looking at the team.
And every one of these experiences, like you were talking about, having been involved in coaching and really realizing how important that this region especially is for these kinds of teams, and making sure that you've got your W, you have your first team in the men's side, your developmental team on the men's side. It's something that's just so intertwined. And like you talked about, it not being a job that's even really, I mean, it'll never really be finished, but still having the mindset of getting that women's first team out there, especially in the growing Super League that just finished up a season. I mean, it's going to be so vital, at least for this area that has been so ingrained, not only in the soccer scene, but I feel like it's also just been so community based as well, where you have people, you have local celebrities that want to be involved with this team. Is that something that you really come into contact a whole lot? What are, even just your own thoughts on the kind of thing about, why so many people from outside of soccer spheres want to be involved within, really this Oakland entity? What would you call it? What would you call it actually? I don't want to see the Oakland family, Oakland entity, like between the roots, the soul, and um Project excuse me, I want to say Project 510. Yeah, sorry, I
That's
get the
it.
numbers mixed
Project
up.
510. Yeah, yeah.
Um, but
Uh,
yeah, 510. What makes non-soccer people want to be involved in this club?
yeah, so when the club started, the founders had a really good idea uh, well, they had a couple really good ideas. Let me just say that. I think they right away they started a community advisory board. And what that was it was a collection of people who, after they listened about what would a professional soccer club look like in Oakland, um, or what would professional soccer look like in Oakland, and what would a club look like in Oakland, they listened to people say definitely men's and women's. They listened to people say definitely like don't sell out like the others might have, right? Like that meant something, but there was a whole host of other big and small things that they had this sounding board from the community on. And they really, this is actually pun intended, like they built roots, they planted seeds, and they've continuously kept this connection to the community. And so it's actually been that authenticity to the idea that we are Oakland rooted. We are the soul of Oakland. We need to capture the ethos. We need to understand the bad, the good, the all of those parts of Oakland and what it means, and make sure that we have people from Oakland involved in that process, so that this is shaped in the best way possible. That I have to credit the founders and the board. Idris Argondawal is the brains behind the brand. Everything that you see, Oakland Roots, the Oakland Soul, Project 510, the crest, the gear, that process, but also the maintenance of the idea that we need to continue to listen to the community, to be able to get things like that, things in on and off the field, right? Has been really important, and that's where you know we've we've shown up in the sense that like those those people who already represent Oakland, Jason Kidd, Marshawn Lynch, G-Eazy, Too Short, like these people are household names in the community, but they have seen in the way that we've acted, that were authentic, that were 10 toes deep in the town, and we actually understand what we're doing there. So that's where I think that people have, when they've investigated, like, hey, what's going on here? They see that it does represent Oakland, and they want to be a part of it.
What has even when I mean, I've seen certain teams that take away their U23 teams or development teams that really want to stick to, the younger academies and, the first team and trying to bridge the gap between these 18, 19-year-old kids and making them move up. And the USLW side, and though there's not a pro tier yet, there still is a developmental pathway like you guys talked about. But
Yeah.
even the USL2 side, where, I mean, we see a lot of college guys that come in that's their time to shine during the summer to lead into a great fall. And I'm a firm believer of that. I mean, when it becomes difficult to manage all of these different working parts and everything else, what keeps you guys going and making sure that these are still the pillars of this organization and that you're still able to give these younger kids from this Oakland area, from these local area codes, this chance to be able to see this pathway up to first team?
Yeah, I mean, look, if we were Project 510 and we prioritized players from Texas or Florida or something like that, right? Like I think it would be inauthentic to kind of the point. When there's a couple things that I think we built Project 510, we wanted localness, and I say that because the first conversations I had with the club involved local players, right? Like that was the question that the owners, the board, the other people involved that I met with in the process of coming here. Everybody's mentioned like, well, local, local, local,
Right.
because it's very, very important. I also, my brother lived here in Oakland, and I went to Cal State East Bay for college, which is right down the way. And so I spent a lot of time here in Oakland. I've been to plenty of sporting events at the Coliseum, but also concerts and just days and hanging out. And I think what you get here is you get the town feel, which is it. People don't have to be from here to be from here, but people who are from here, the representation of the vibe is very, very important, and everybody knows what fits. I think that when we came to the idea with Project 510, we looked at the landscape of soccer in a way. First of all, we uh, we exist in the East Bay where there's 3.5 million people. And if you look at, Croatia or Uruguay or different places around the world, they're in the World Cup, semifinals or finals, like, and they have the same population. Oakland's also one of the top three most diverse cities in the United States, which obviously is one of the most diverse countries in the world. And those three cities are Sac, Stockton, and Oakland. So we have not only just the diversity here in Oakland, we also have San Francisco nearby, et cetera. So within touching distance, we have a ton of talent. There's youth national players coming out of here. There's professional players coming out of here left and right. They've just had to go other places. The second part of it wasn't just the localness, but it's also this idea that, like, look, professional development happens from 16 to 2021. And when we're looking at the landscape, we could play kids against kids, 13-year-olds, again, focus on 13-year-olds. How many talented 13-year-olds make it to 20 in a professional environment? And you have to invest a lot of money in a
Mhm.
in a 13-year-old, knowing that also the output. Now, obviously, the academy model has been shown around the world to produce top talent. I understand that. When you also look at the pathways that top players travel, oftentimes 14, 15 is when they move from their amateur club to a more professional environment. We looked at the landscape, and there's a ton of 14, 15-year-olds um, uh, that leave here every single year to professional academies. And we just said, okay, with our resources and the way that we're set up in the USL with USL entities, the UPSL in Northern California, like, how do we formulate the best professional development step for players at that 15 to 17 age group for 2 to 3 years into the first team? So that allowed us to say, let's focus on local talent, but let's focus on local talent at the professional development level, and then we can cooperate with all of the clubs. Because naturally, if you look at some of the local clubs here, even just in the 510 area code, Newark, AFC, East Bay United, like, they have players traveling to other professional clubs every single year, and we just obviously can focus our attention on those players, but also some players from even adjacent areas of Northern California that still represent localness to us, just not in the same focus. So Project 510 needs to be focused on the 510 area code. And when you look at our starting 11 in the 510 games, we want to see guys that are from the 510. That gives the first team the best chance of having high level players from the 510 area code moving forward. And maybe those players don't make it to the first team. They go off to college, etc. We've got some good colleges nearby here that we can send them to and also get them back from in the summertime.
Yeah.
And I think it's a really cool way to shout out what's already in place, right? We took the approach with Roots when we were building it, and we will take this approach with Soul, which is, rather than go into the landscape and fight all the clubs over a 12-year-old, we want to come in our position as a professional club, which is the top of the pyramid, and we
Mhm.
want to build on top of what is an incredible landscape already here. And if we do that right, we get more fans in our stadium, and I think the proof is there in the pudding. Because people then are net promoters instead of frustrated with the club. People then become invested when they see their friends or guys that they played against at 12 years old on the field for the first team. We see this the world over. So I think there's an important community connection that we're living out through Project 510 on the football side of things. And then the opportunity for players to travel not just into the first team, but beyond the first team is a super important part of us having, the leaves at the top end of the tree because we know we've got the roots there as well.
So I've got to ask, with the perspective that you've been able to give me, it's obviously something that has been through years of work, not only through your own doing, but with the people that have been around the roots. Oh, I mean, it, it's been a club that's been around for the last 5 or 6 years, at least at the professional level. I mean, when you develop this strategy of staying locally and not necessarily looking at, you know, not that you're not looking, but it's not a priority to look for these guys that are outside of this local area that already has so much talent, like you've talked about when you're in those first couple meetings back in 2019, even as an assistant coach, I mean, I have to imagine that your opinion still very much is involved within the organization. When you go out and you do this kind of research and you come to this kind of formula to creating these affiliates that will be able to increase the talent pool and lead to this progression of this first team and growing the club overall. I mean, what who were the first voices that really brought this kind of scheme up, and then ultimately, you know, uh, the people who take this on and move this forward? What are some of those decisions that have had to have been made along the way, whether difficult or not? Maybe you don't have all the information. You've got to take a bit of a leap of faith. I mean, who are the voices that are really bringing us to see this Oakland Roots Club to where we're at right now?
Yeah, so the board here, Barney Schabel, our director, our chairman, Stephen Aldrich, Idris Argondawal, who I mentioned, our chief marketing officer and one of the original founders, along with Mike Geddes, our chief purpose officer. Those four have been the ones who I think since day one. If you add Ben O'Nagel into that, who was one of the founders as well. Like they were since day one, the people who were here building out the club, front office, technical from there. Eric Yamamoto, who I think many know, associate head coach down at Santa Clara and works with Dienza as well, has been our VP of football. And, he and I have worked hand in hand on this overall technical strategy as we've moved from NISA into USL Championship. That's when I first stepped into the role as technical director, and we really started kind of putting teeth to this idea of U20 football being what we're really about in terms of Project 510 and then the connection to the first team. So, Nana Atakora, who was our captain in 2020, has been our director of player personnel. And he's super important in terms of managing a lot of the players that go in between the first team and second team and have progressed into the first team because his role with the first team is, player personnel. It's making sure these guys are taken care of and the dots are connected as players. So those have been really the important people. And then the head coach of the first team, is a very important piece to the puzzle. We've had different coaches in Project 510 for different reasons. It's obviously a great opportunity for them to step in and show their level as coaches at this level, at the USL2 level, and they've progressed on to roles that they all. I think they all credit the time here as an important part of their education, which has been cool. But also the head coach of the first team. Last year Gavin came in and did a great job of showing the level of talent actually in Project 510 by playing them. And at the end of the day, that I think is the crucial piece is that the first team head coach has confidence in some of the players that he sees coming through to put them on the field and then having them grow from there, grow in training, and then opening the door for the next one. So it's a super important piece to the puzzle as well.
Huge, absolutely. I mean, so if you wouldn't mind, I've appreciated the conversation that we've gotten to have about the club and really the different branches that we've all been able to see. But I think I would be doing a disservice not to talk a little bit about how a lot of these relationships impact the women's side as well. I mean, and ultimately, what are these steps that we're going to be able to be able to bear witness to in terms of, seeing the Super League becoming a part of, again, how ingrained that the Oakland roots have been in USL in really just such a short amount of time. But, what is the plan moving forward? If you're allowed to tell us, I don't want to be digging for secrets, but I'd love to
No,
hear it.
no. I mean, look, we're very vocal about the plan and what the steps are. The first thing is a stadium. Like, I'm sorry, but we have been transients as a club, which has been a very unique experience. We've played in five different places as a professional first team, and we can't do that knowing what we know. Like, we can't do that on the women's side. We've learned so much from the launch of Roots, the launch of Project 510, that we've applied to the launch of Soul. And I say that very, very honestly. The that we didn't know what we didn't know when we were launching Roots and the early stages there, but we do know a lot more here with Soul. And so the venue matters. We need to have a pathway to stability. The Coliseum is incredible, but it isn't ours long term, and that is also isn't the long term solution. It might be the short to medium term solution, but it's not going to be a long term solution. And that the Coliseum is obviously at a stage. It's a cathedral, but it's not been. It has its faults. And so what we want to do when we launch women's professional soccer is we want to make sure that the pathway is clear for us to have a stable match day environment alongside the roots in an equitable way. And I say the match day environment, but also the stability of the club overall as well. Our training facility here is incredible, and we're prepared to rev the engine on hosting a women's professional team here. With some expansion and into in other ways to accommodate that equitably. When that comes, whether it's next year or the following year, that's again very much stadium dependent. When that comes, though, we will have a professional women's team alongside our professional men's team, and then we will also have U20 amateur, which I'm really excited for because we got to figure out a way to have a U20 year-round amateur women's competition in some way and in a meaningful way. And so that's, you know, I like to say amateur football is actually the health of the ecosystem. High level amateur football is really, it speaks a lot to how healthy the players aspiring to be professionals, what that pool looks like. And I think the amateur women's side has grown incredibly with the addition of USLW the last few years. But it's only during the summer. And so we want year round because we want to be able to replicate the USLW experience for high level U20 players. We've had 14, 15, 16, 17-year olds into training every summer with our USLW team and in games every summer with our USLW team. And that's been an important part of this stage of what Seoul is. As much as we want to be competing for the championship in NorCal, we also want to make sure that we plant the seeds for us being a place where talented teenagers, we have many youth national team players that are from Oakland or from an adjacent community here. And we want to be a place that starts with that as a huge part of how we build Soul.
Because this is just ultimately what these developmental pieces really are for these first teams. I mean, you've got to be able to develop the younger t I'm I'm not saying anything new that you haven't already, but it's really about just getting these guys, winning is important, and that's what you're going to get from competitors regardless, or that's what you're going to have competitors strive for regardless in these amateur organizations. But this is more than anything creating the higher level feeds back into the health of this first team, creating higher level talent, higher level competition leads to really being able to bring these pieces back into the first team and really just developing as well. Exactly like you're saying. And it's something that, I mean, really, the fact that this is something that has been sought out really from the community side and the front office side, I think is something that is really, really unique and beneficial from this organization.
Yeah, yeah, it certainly is unique. Early days, we had a conversation about Athletic Bilbao. I was lucky actually, alongside Gavin, who's the head coach of the first team. Back in 2016, we spent some time there, about a week studying and learning about them. And it's very interesting because they're obviously their recruitment policy has led to them having, I think, one of the best integrated local structures for youth talent and talent development in the state of Biscaya there. And so it's been a conversation of like, oh, well, it can be done. Just, we just have to choose to do it in a certain way, and then also continue to improve that so that we're meeting the needs of our first team and our community. And I think that's been an important part of the process. And now I'm excited that the women's side is going to be coming soon.
So aside from the visions of expansion and the women's side coming to development of players and everything else, what's the ultimate vision and the technical direction for this club as a whole? Of course, it's about winning and it's about creating the best or developing the best players possible. But what are some of the other things that, again, maybe people from the outside aren't fully seeing from the club, if you think there is anything? I mean, it's a very open and honest club, so I
Yeah.
wouldn't be surprised if there isn't much already. But I mean, tell me about some of this. What would you tell a New York kid who knows very little?
Yeah, well, I mean, what I think is right now we're trying to be the best championship team that we can be, best USLW team that we can be, best in terms of talent development that we can be.
Mm.
What that looks like over the course of the next 5 years, like the landscape of U.S. soccer is going to grow. If in the USL, we're going to have promotion and relegation, which means there's going to be something above us, but also something below us, and that's an important challenge. I think we've said we want to be the biggest club in the world, and I don't think that anybody's running away from that. I say that because in 30 years, it might not be MLS and USL, right? It might just be,
Yeah.
something else. Like, they had the first division in England, now the Premier League. I don't think Liverpool was like, we're going to be the best first division, but not the Premier League. Like whatever competition you're in, you want to be the best, and I think that the really cool part of the next 5 years in US soccer is we're going to see this explosion of eyes on the game, participation in the game, money spent on the game. And Oakland Roots was going to be right at the center of that. Like Oakland is an incredible place, incredible vibe around the club with the community. And when we think about as a club, like we still have to grow so much. We've been able to manage our way through the last few years in terms of some of the size of stadium and the economics of running a team in Oakland and those constraints. And now, what the next 5 years looks like without some of those constraints. Obviously, still constraints. We're not Barcelona in terms of our spending. And I think we want to run a sustainable club. That's been the other part of the conversation with the board since day one. It's been sustainability because these things can go belly up. People do make, let's be honest about professional soccer. We also do lose teams every single year, even if we see expansion coming. We lose teams every single year because of a host of reasons. But the financials of football is one big reason, right? And so we've wanted to make sure that this club is built on sustainable business practice. And I think that sustainable business practice has guided us through these last 5 years, through COVID and the impact that had on the club and in the early days. But the next 5 years and the next 10 years, this club is going to grow into being one of the best in the country for sure, and if not the world.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's already something and I think a lot of people who maybe don't know USL Championship or don't know the US soccer system scene, they know the Oakland Roots for the vibrant color and the creativity behind, I mean, partly also from celebrity influence as well, but from also the kits, from the colors. It's something that just draws you in very easily. But I think also going back to what you're talking about, the sustainability, the community impact, and what really makes this club Oakland and not some other city in the United States and being able to operate the same way. If this was a different environment, if you were to pick the roots up and move them over into New York, it'd be something that's completely different. And I think that's really what makes the roots so much different than any other club is because of I mean, I feel like I'm talking in circles, but it really just is the theme of the club of how Oakland that it is. That there's more Oakland, and I think the Roots name really plays more into the actual community than it does just as the name of the team or like any other mascot or name or whatever else you would want to call the club.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, that's what I encourage, some clubs have done, and I encourage the new clubs coming in to do. Like, get it right with your community.
Yeah.
Even colleges, offer this opportunity for community, whether it's on campus community or the adjacent community, to represent them well, and again, I think one of the best decisions that Roots has made since day one has been listening to what the community wants. Now, I say that because we've gotten um, uh, we've gotten that foundation right, and I think it's going to serve us well to make sure we continue to make those decisions or decisions in that light over the coming days and years when what should be, which is a club started in Oakland should be in Oakland. The franchise model allows clubs to move, but Liverpool is Liverpool. Werder Bremen is Werder Bremen because they represent that community and they do it in a way where the community shows up. So I think that's the best part. Oakland's a really cool place, and a lot of people don't know about it. So we're happy to put it on the map.
Huge, huge. And so I've got to ask though too. I mean, and if you wouldn't mind getting into a bit of your playing experience and some of the coaching stops that you've had along the way, but um, and I'll leave you to it however long or short that the story is, pulling certain experiences out from everything else. But I have to imagine that, you being a player and you having been a coach for a while, I mean, before ever coming into Oakland, it helps with so much. It helps with getting over some of the learning hurdles while also opening your mind to realizing how much else there is to learn. I'd love to hear really just about your soccer journey if you wouldn't mind. And again, as long as short it is, I'm here for all of it.
Yeah, yeah. Um, Look, I think I'm almost like anybody else in the sense that I really just love football, and I have since I was a kid. My parents is actually my mom's not into sports too much. She's a uh, music teacher, life in music. But my dad was an American football player. And so neither one of them were soccer players, but somehow I started playing soccer. And I just started from a young age, and it was something that it has never ceased to amaze me. And the more that I learn about the sport, the more that I want to learn about the sport. And that really, I think, has been um, the coolest part. Like the more that you learn about football, the more that you want to travel to see it done differently. You want to experience goals. You want to experience, great football. And when I was growing up, I grew up in Stockton, here in the Central Valley in Northern California, and I just grew up with a lot of a lot of people who played soccer differently. A lot of Latinos, heavy Mexican influence out there, but also Central American, Hondurans, and Salvadorans and whatnot. But also like people from Africa and the Philippines, and everyone played soccer, and it's just a language that you can really speak with really anyone. So that's been my experience. I studied sociology in college, and I went to Cal State East Bay to play soccer. It was Cal State Hayward then, actually, which is cool. I have the last jackets that say Hayward on them.
Oh, nice,
So
fun.
when we were playing there for the last few years, it was a different thing.
Yeah.
We were playing our home games there at the stadium, and it's one of the best views around. Sunsets in the background on the San Mateo Bridge, and really cool place to go to school. But studying sociology and also studying the sociology of sport, that kind of piqued my interest in a completely different way. I always said I wanted to be a professional athlete, but to be honest, I wasn't that good of a player. I played again my 4 years of college, and afterwards I got a chance to go over to Germany and play for a little bit. And it was one of those things. I bought a one-way ticket and was like, look, I figured out in the process that you could be there for 3 months. So if I didn't get a contract, then I at least was there for 3 months, and I would go around and play. But I had a month trial at an amateur club there in Bavaria, and that was cool. So I went over there and ended up getting a contract playing the fifth division. But when I was there, that was when it clicked for me that I wanted to coach. I remember going to this U10s training session, and these kids were like I mean, their head was up. And I say that in the sense like at 10 years old, they were scanning and coaching and making decisions. And it wasn't an element of like, oh, they can't pass the ball. They were playing with speed. And I was fascinated by it. It was something that I'd never seen in the United States. And the clubs that I played for, they have really good, youth academies. They're not the Bundesliga level clubs, but they're producing a lot of talent and guys going on to high level. And I was just fascinated by it. So the second club I played at, I actually wanted to coach, and that was kind of why I made the decision to play there. I was an assistant for the U17s, and during that time we played like Greuther and FC Nuremberg, Bayern Munich. We played like their 16s in the league that we were in, and it was awesome. That really like that was it, and I was like, yeah, this is what I want to do because I saw what really good players were. And I also went to a lot of games when I was over in Germany too. And I saw what really good football was. And it was just something that the more that I started to study football, the more that I realized like there's this art, there's this science, but there's this thing of like a club and a team and a stadium and all of that like I really want to be a part of. So when I was I played over in Germany for about a year and a half, coached over there while I was working, while I was playing, and then I came back and I started my master's, as I mentioned in sports pedagogy. I just wanted to learn everything I could about coaching, about the sport of football, about managing athletes, developing, psychology. And so it's just been, why do we do what we do when we do it to get the product on the field that we get on the weekend? And that question, you know, why do we do what we do when we do it? Is because the more that I learned about what you were seeing on the field, the more I realized you can influence it as a coach because it is 11 players. Yeah, okay, but it's also actually 18 players and it's the coaching staff and it's the fans and it's the ethos of the club and it's all these interconnected things. And the more that you studied it, the more that I studied it, the more I just wanted to know. So it wasn't only training methodology that piqued my interest. It was also how do I get the most fit team and how do I develop physical superiority, right? How do I add psychology to that and sociology? Where's the line between the psychosocial, and how everything interacts? So for me, coaching became this like, yeah, I'm so fascinated by it that I just want to learn how to do it to the best of my ability. So I started again, as I mentioned in Stockton, and my time in youth club taught me there's so much like it taught me where these kids were playing for fun and they were for fun, but they were so good. And we had a couple players where I was like, I see this kid as having incredibly high potential, but I also see the difference. And at the same time, I was working at junior college and I was also working at UOP during that 6 year span. And when I started coaching a collegiate team, there's a day I still remember this. There was a day where in like a 24-hour period, everybody from UOP down to the U13s at Monarchis, as well as I was running the Central Valley PDP. So I was a state coach for NorCal's free selection program. And I think it's like 48-hour period, like Monday to Tuesday. And everyone in all of these teams, 13 to 17 in PDP, 13 to 19 in Monarchis, as well as UOP, they all ran the same two exercises, and they were exercises that I had thought up.
Sure.
Great coaches are great thieves. So there's elements that I stole from somebody else, but definitely modified them and made them my own. And that 48-hour period taught me like, okay, wow, these players are all thinking similarly because of the structures that we create. And so I really started to at that time realized like I need to spend time focusing on my methodology as a coach, my pedagogy as a coach, how I create environments, how I create rules and restrictions, how I create the impetus for idea that I that will make more intelligent players so that eventually they can be more autonomous, but I can see the type of intelligence that I was inspired by that 10-year-old in Germany.
Right.
And so I that was kind of my reason for moving to Sac Republic. in
Yeah.
the academy because I thought, 13s and 14s, yeah, there's pressure to win, whatever. But like it really wasn't about that. I knew I could win. At UOP, the last year that we left, I got to do a lot of the mix of physical and tactical development for the team. We went from 1-15-1 our second year to 13-4-2. We ended up losing to Stanford on their way to a national championship, as Stanford does. But we it was an incredible opportunity at the U23 level. So the 13s and 14s was something completely different, and it was it wasn't focused on physically making them superior. It was agility, it was mobility, that type of stuff. But it was football, and it was teaching football, and it was so much fun for me to formulate, a lot around my brain-centered learning and decision making process and perception process. So I started to study more visual search strategy and trying to train different patterns of looking and deciding. But also, you know, that period of time helped me understand like I don't love 13s and 14s football.
Sure.
And
Yeah.
that was okay. It was a great experience. And I see some of those guys now kind of growing up into men, and you can see so much of who they were as players back then still being who they are as players now, which is really cool, and how much they've grown. But in my coaching process, I decided when I was working with the 13s and 14s, like I want to actually try to work with the best possible players that I can. But I also want to make sure that, you know, I'm thinking about how I uh, influence the environment, not just on the field, but around the field, because it's more than just methodology. And so that's kind of why I moved up in the age groups at SAC Republic when the opportunities came, and then why I came to Roots. In that process of just like, hey, I want to work at the professional level. I want to work at the highest level I can. I want to see what, the best of the best look like if I get to work with them. And if I can make players better, I think then that's more fun for players. And if they perform better because of the way I construct the environment or the way that we work together in that player coach relationship. That's something that I always want to be growing in. And so this stage of my career was like, how do you build a club? And
Yeah.
and I think you only get a few opportunities to do that. But coming to Oakland Roots definitely felt like I could be a part of the foundations of what's going to be something really incredible. And for my education, this step was super important. It was important to learn about the operation as much as the football and methodology. It was important to learn about the performance and medical department around top players in a top team. And it's been important to learn about the scouting and recruitment and all of that. Not that I didn't know about any of those things ahead of time, but the way I've learned in the process of building and building something uh, enduringly great, I think has been an incredible opportunity, as much as getting to be a head coach. Um, uh, that I feel like is where maybe in the long term, I know that I love to be. I also see my process as a coach as how much can I learn about all the different facets so that I can really optimize those things and not just be able to do methodology and just one thing.
So now, ultimately, what are you looking for? What are the kinds of players that come in and show promise that really look like they could be great, phenomenal pieces for a first team, men's or women's, moving forward the next 5 or 6 years? What are the kinds of players that you're really looking forward to? What are these softer factors, regardless of position, regardless of, even on-field performance? What are the kinds of people that you and the rest of this club really are looking forward to bringing in, whether it's in the short term, the next couple months, or even longer term things as this club continues to grow and be a staple of United States soccer?
Yeah, I think first and foremost, you want good people. There's whether it's a staff member, a player, you we want good people. We recognize that we're representing a community, and we're representing a set of values that the club has, that we are responsible for having the players, the staff, really live out. And so I think we first and foremost look for good people. I think that you're a person before you're a job, and the job could be staff member, the job could be player, but I think there's a certain set of human qualities, you know, honesty, the real kind of foundations of what we want in society. So that's number one. I never kind of shy away from that. But we want people with ambition as well. We want players who are thinking about themselves as top players, and they have that kind of internal, intrinsic foundation before they come to us, and they play that way. Whether you're a defender or you're a forward or you're a midfielder, we're not coaching effort. You know what I mean? Like the effort, the drive, the intensity that you have, and by intensity of effort, I mean on the field, but also how intense are you about your prehab performance? How intense are you about your hydration and nutrition planning and how that prepares you? Those things are real, they're intangibles. They'll be questioned in the process of a season or as a professional. Everybody understands that because it's difficult, and we want to make sure that we're as much as possible finding players that we don't have to worry about when it comes to that. We know they're going to need some motivation at a certain point in time, but the inspiration has got to come from within them. And then we want intelligence. We want players that are really actively scanning, problem solving, coaching. They're looking to solve problems with their mouth and their brain and their feet. And when it comes down to it, they're the players on the field, and so we want to see that intelligence come through. So that intensity, uh, but that real intelligence on the field and off the field, because I think intelligent players, they're inquisitive, they want to learn, they want to know how they can do it better, and I think that those are some of our key qualities, and I say that across all of the teams. If we look at some of the players that we have. For Seoul last night had a draw, but there's a couple players and a couple plays and actions and moments for the team where you can see them thinking and problem solving, and I love that kind of football. I think that for me is like um, uh, as a fan, when you're watching a team really like with drive solve problems defensively and attack, and you can see they're on the front foot, but they're also scanning to really have options or communicate or whatever the case may be. That attitude, and I think that's inspiring to fans, even if the result doesn't go your way, which is going to happen in football. But I think that on that type of energy and conveying that type of energy, if you look at the teams, that's the type of player that we're really looking for across all of them.
I mean, just really being able to pull everything all together and just getting the full scope of what the Oakland Roots are about. I mean, I think we've had a great conversation today, Mr. Farrell. And that being said, I mean, I've exhausted all my questions, but I want to leave it open to you in case there's anything that I missed, anything that you want to continue to bring up. I know we talked a lot, just through messages and everything else, but once again, I want to thank you for your time and for the conversation.
Yeah, no, absolutely, man. And we talked a little bit about kind of what you guys are doing with Kickball Pod, and I think it's valuable. The amateur landscape, collegiate, USL2, the steps that it's taking right now is massive, and it's going to be massively important. And so it's an honor to step on here and have this conversation. We're big fans of what you guys do, and so I hope some of the people who listen to your content will listen to this and hope it's beneficial for them as well.
Absolutely. And if there's anything that we can do to help the Roots with amateur work, whether it's, I mean, anything that we can do on the media end, we'll talk and we'll figure things out. I mean, this is the kind of club that is special. And seeing that from the outset and having this conversation, it's just been more of a reason why, you know, why I came to you guys in the first place to have this talk.
Well, we appreciate it. Yeah, and thanks so much for the time and the opportunity.
course. Thanks so much, Mr. Farrell. We'll talk soon.